before you take that first step, what is the end goal?
Welcome, Talon. Welcome to my show.
In our world of aesthetics, business for some may come naturally. When we were going through our medical training, we somehow missed out on all the business classes. I've got it as one of my missions, and I know you do too, to set out and change that narrative.
It's not only the help, which is super important, it's also your patience. I think that's one of the key factors.
Building a reputation is very difficult. Losing it is very easy. I tell people, hey, if success for you is having freedom of schedule and a Friday off, work towards that. Branch out from just financial picture.
You never stop learning. I'm learning every day.
Always got to be a student. Understand first, don't buy a device to make money. Buy a device to meet a need.
Yep.
And you think you've made it and you think we're awesome, that is a dangerous place to be, and complacency is a dangerous spot.
If you are an aesthetic injector, a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, or clinic owner, please sit back and relax. But remember, like every treatment, this podcast comes with a risk. You may end up becoming very successful. Welcome, Talon. Welcome to my show. Good to have you here.
Gosh, Felix, I just thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this a ton. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It will.
Thank you for allowing me to be very relaxed today. It's not normally a backwards cap glasses type of day, but we're at the lake with the family this weekend, so I went extra relaxed. So thanks for putting up with the dress down day.
It's quite a funny story how we met, right? We had this Lips and Biz event with Julie Horn in Miami, and it was great. But one nurse reached out to me and said, listen, the day after your event, I was at an event from Emote, from this the Morpheus 8 device. We have it as well. And there was a guy speaking. His name was Talon. And he was so great in business topics, and he went so perfectly into step-by-step advice, and you should meet this guy. And then I immediately went on Instagram, found you, and contacted you, and accidentally you heard of me as well, as you said, because you were bumping into all these nurses.
I was bumping into your people, at the event.
Cool.
And they said the same thing to me. They said, we just did this Lip and Biz event. It was phenomenal. Was that your first one in the States?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the first one in total. We'd never had one before.
Oh, wow. Well, the reviews were amazing. The people that I talked to said, hey, you have got to meet these people. I think you guys should chat. And then here we are.
Thank you. It's amazing. And the good thing is, I always had this feeling, people who have who are good in the medical profession, or as an injector or plastic surgeon, are not necessarily good in business. And it's always a big pleasure to meet people who have this combination. So I'm super excited to talk about this with you today. How to be a good doctor, see your patients and have that in place, and grow and run your business at the same time.
It is a skill that one has to learn and obtain, just like anything else we do with your injection technique or your surgical technique. Business for some may come naturally, but the reality is it's a skill that you could acquire. And like you said, when we were going through our medical training, we somehow missed out on all the business classes. And so it's well known, at least here in the States, that medical professionals tend to be the worst business people. So I've got it as one of my missions, and I know you do too, to set out and change that narrative. And so I really enjoy podcasts like this. I enjoy the opportunity to educate and collaborate because I think the reality is there's a lot of tips and tricks that you and I have that people, once they employ some simple principles, will make big changes for their practice and for their patients.
Absolutely. And I love to give value back, and I love to help people with that. Let me know, how did you get your business skills? What is your CV in this regards?
Funny enough, the reality is all of my business acumen came from owning my own businesses. So if you wanted the long version, I can give it to you. But the condensed version is my dad, who was also a physician, did me a huge favor and didn't give me any free rides. At the time, I thought, what in the world, Dad? Just buy me a car, right? And he said, nope, you got to go buy it. And I said, well, I don't have any money. He said, you got to get a job. So the long and the short of it is I got a job as a landscaper. I mean, putting in custom landscape sprinkler systems. And I loved that job. I did it every summer. And one summer, after doing it many years, and I made it to foreman, my dad had a colleague who said, "Hey, Pete," that's my dad's name. "Hey, Pete, I know your son landscapes. Would he come over and do a sprinkler system for me?" And my dad asked me, and I never thought to do a sprinkler system on my own. I always worked for somebody else, and I made it to foreman. I did the bidding. I ran a crew, but I never thought to do it for myself. And so this doctor had me come out and said, "Hey, I'll just pay you to do it. Don't worry about doing it with your company. I'll pay you on a weekend." So I thought, well, why don't I try it? I didn't have access to materials, so I just went to our local department store, our home goods store, and figured out what the materials cost. I gave him a proposal, and he said yes. And so the very next weekend, I did a sprinkler system. Now, mind you, I was working for $15 US an hour, which at the time I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
I did that sprinkler system for my dad's colleague, and that weekend I walked away with $2,000 of my own money. $2,000. I thought, why would I ever work for anybody else ever again?
Amazing.
So it set me on this trajectory to entrepreneurship. And so I learned a ton running my own company all throughout undergraduate, all throughout medical school. And when I went to medical school, I thought, hey, I need something more formal. So I also got my MBA, my master's in business. At the same time, I got my medical degree. So I have formal training, more importantly, real world training.
I agree on that 100%. And you never stop learning. I'm learning every day in terms of marketing, in terms of employees, employee branding, everything. Even finances is a learning every day.
Always got to be a student.
Yes. So, Talon, let's assume you're a nurse or just have finalized your trainings and you work for someone or in a hospital and you want to start your own business. What is the right time to do that? What basic skills should you have or should you acquire to start your own business?
Timing is always difficult. It's kind of like having a baby. There's never a good time. You just have to make sure that you have a few things in order, and then at some point, it's all about making that first step. Now, some things that you can do to make that first step a little better are have a clear understanding of the space, and these are principles that go beyond just the aesthetics. Anyone that's trying to start a new business, have a clear understanding of the space. So a few things, if you're taking notes, that I would be thinking about or that I would educate on is try to get an understanding on what is needed. Meaning, do I need certain licensure? Do I need insurances? What physical space do I need? So are there any materials or supplies or goods that I have to procure before I can start? So get a understanding of what is needed and what's required of you. And then a good way to start understanding the space is to do what we call a SWOT analysis in business school. And that's understanding your strengths in the market, the weaknesses, the opportunities in this market, and the threats. So SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then the best piece of advice I can tell you after having some of the foundational understandings of your requirements and then doing a SWOT analysis for your market is to get help, friends. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. The three big areas that looking back on my road that were so helpful to me. Number one, legal help. I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. I don't know what the laws are. And so making sure that you have the contracts in place, making sure that you have liability structures in place. So get legal help, get accounting help, because even though I'm good with money, I'm not necessarily keeping track of it. I don't know. In the United States, we have to have all kinds of different corporations structured. So your lawyer and your accountant can help get those corporations structured. And then financial help. Meet a banker, shake a hand. So that's how I would position myself for that first step. And then the last thing that I would do, and this is my favorite thing, is that before you take that first step, please spend some diligent time thinking for yourself, what is the end goal? So you and me today on this podcast, if you don't mind, Felix, I would love to give a few homework assignments. Okay, I'd love to give a few homework assignments. One of the homework assignments is reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Millions and millions of copies have been sold. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is by Franklin Covey. He gives this notion of beginning with the end in mind. And the reason why that's so important is when you take this first step, if you know what your goal is, if you know what the end is, if you have defined for yourself what success is, that first step is going to be in that direction. And then your next step and your next step and your next step will be working towards that end goal. So it brings a lot of clarity, and the decisions you make today will drive you towards that goal that you've decided. So that's my speech. That's my encouragement for anyone that wants to go do it. What's your take on that?
I love this. And that's exactly what we did in Miami. We had this, we called it the roadmap to success. And we worked on some tasks like what is your life audit? Where are you standing in life? What are your life goals?
I love that one. Life audit.
Thank you. It's not, it's not always, not everyone has to be super successful and needs like 140 employees, you know what I mean? So we're often driven by some kind of narratives. We see Instagram, we think this entrepreneur life is super sexy. It's the cars, the traveling, private jet. Well, I mean, that's a tiny, tiny bit of it. And in the background, it's this huge, huge iceberg under the water, which is sleepless nights, worries, fights, conflicts. It's sometimes really an ugly game, right? So I love to do this homework as well, or recommend to do this. Think, what is your goal in business? What is your goal in life? What are your resources? What are your strengths and weaknesses, as you already said, right? Because there's nothing worse than running into something you don't like and you're frustrated. And would you agree on that?
I agree. And like you're saying, one thing that when I'm speaking that I really try to hit home, especially in America, everyone has an idea, like you're saying, of what success is. But the reality is success does not have to be about financial position or necessarily wealth or things, right? Tangible things. Success could be, when I'm speaking, I tell people, hey, if success for you is having freedom of schedule and a Friday off, work towards that. Take steps towards getting yourself a career or a position that allows you Fridays off.
Absolutely.
Freedom of schedule, that could be success. So when you're defining success, I would say branch out from just a financial picture, because it's not that. For me, one of my measures is I really want freedom of schedule. I want control of my schedule. I don't want a boss. I want to be able to take off Fridays and jump on this wonderful podcast with you whenever I want, and I have to go check into a hospital somewhere, right? So when you're thinking about success, don't get stuck on things.
Success is waking up as a happy, healthy, and fulfilled person in the morning.
Yes, agreed.
Coming back to the business side and financial success and freedom, it sometimes is even a better choice just to be small. You can start very small and you can stay, and you can be super successful by only you in a small office, a small, nice office, having your own schedule, have no employees, have not much infrastructure costs. If you do the math, it's sometimes super successful. I'm having 140 employees. I have to pay over 1 million wages every month. And so it's tough. And if people believe I have a huge EBITDA or a huge profit every year, it's sometimes just not true. And if I would be a small, tiny office, a small boutique clinic for myself, some years would be, when I see my revenue, would be much more successful than having all these employees.
That is such an interesting thought. Another book that's worth the read is Bigger is Not Always Better. I think that's the title, and I read that when I was on the front of a huge growth, and I really needed to check myself. My wife's grandfather, he told me something a long time. I've been married for 21 years this year. He told me something a long time ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He told me
you look so young. How old are you?
What's this? Botox and fillers and works, and Morpheus works. I'll be 40 this year. 40
okay,
this year.
So married around 20. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. So he told me something a long time ago that stuck with me. He said, Talon, it's not about what you make. It's about what you keep. And it's so true, right? You can make $1 million, but spend 1.2 million to get that, and you're in the hole. I can make 500,000 and keep 400,000, and I'm better off in the second situation. And so what you're saying is so true. Bigger is not always better. I've talked to a lot of physicians that reminisce about the old days. Man, if I could just go back to when I had 8 employees and I was in my small office space, because with more people comes more headaches, more frustrations, just more of everything. So that's where a clarity in your end game will really make sense.
I agree 100%. 100%. So what are the key success factors when you start your own clinic, in your opinion?
It's funny. It's going to sound a little cheesy, but humility in this industry goes a long way. So if you maintain just a little bit of humility and you're not afraid to ask for help and you're not afraid to make relationships, as I look back over the last 8 years of owning my own company, some of these early relationships that I made, that I may have not made if I was kind of the traditional, full of myself plastic surgeon, those have carried me an unbelievable way. So when I've asked for help, it usually works out really, really well. And if I maintain some sense of humility and develop relationships that I may have not made otherwise, those relationships have led me things to like this podcast or speaking every weekend in front of 550 people. A lot of times we have. So some keys just globally, I think, don't be afraid to ask for help and maintain some humility, and that will take you really, really far. You'll be surprised.
It's so cool. We have so much in common. It's almost more or less the same words I used on that event. And I said something like, we are in the business of relationships.
Yeah.
That's our business. And it's not only the help, which is super important, it's also your patience. I think that's one of the key factors.
Yeah, and to dovetail off that, Felix, one thing I figured out a long time ago that has served me well is I somehow clicked with me that in our world of aesthetics, our patients are looking for an experience, not just a result. And when you kind of understand that, it's a little bit of magic. When you understand our patient, this is disposable income, they have free time, they could go anywhere to get a result. There's people all over the world giving amazing results. But if you can understand, hey, not is it just the result, but these people are looking for an experience, which dovetails into what you're saying about relationship and how you deal with people. When you understand you're selling an experience and not just a result, you have a leg up on everybody else that's just selling a result. I assure you.
Perfect.
I assure you.
Perfect. How do you structure this experience?
Yeah, so it depends. Our clinic is getting larger and larger now. So we've got surgical services, we have medical spa services, and we have injectable services. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my 3 big branches in my clinic. Each one has its own flavor or its own design, depending on where you enter in. I think in general, you ready for another homework assignment?
100%.
Okay. In general, there is a transformative book for me called The Power of Moments, and it's by Chip and Dan Heath, and they're performance psychologists. And the really cool thing about this is they went to Disney World. Have you ever been to Disney World here in the States?
Mm-hmm. No, okay. But in Paris, yeah.
So you understand the game. It's the kids love it, families love it. It's very expensive. Everything is really, really expensive. So these performance psychologists, they went through and they asked mom and dad at different checkpoints, rating their trip, 1 being terrible, 10 being amazing. And they asked dad at the food line, like, how's your trip? And the dad would say, oh, it's a 3 out of 10. The hot dog is cold and it cost me a lot of money. They asked mom at the line, hey, how's your trip? Oh, it's a 5 out of 10. We've been waiting for 2 hours. Interestingly enough, though, they get to the end of the trip and they ask mom and dad, hey, what's the trip? How was it? They said, 9 out of 10. It was amazing. So they said, hold on a second. We go back, we look at the scores. You should have been a 4 out of 10. Why is it a 9 out of 10? And here's what they figured out when they drilled down in this book, that Disney World has done a masterful job of capturing moments that are memorable. So think about your life, Felix. The day-to-day, this stuff is kind of not very memorable. It's just
this one will be. This one will be.
Well, I mean, just our day-to-day. You're seeing patients, you're doing your day-to-day. It's just kind of meh. But what we remember in life is the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
Right? The valleys and the peaks. So knowing that, Disney World has done an unbelievable job of crafting the 10 out of 10 moments. So that way, when you have the 3s out of 10s and the 4 out of 10s, what you remember when you think about that trip is the 10 out of 10 moments. So if you go read that book, that will really help you craft 10 out of 10 moments. Put yourself in your consumer's seat. Start with the first phone call, or even start with your first introduction, maybe on Instagram or social media, that first contact point, and then play it all the way through. What does the phone sound like? We even have, Felix, I want people to remember what my office smells like. My wife...
It's so crazy. We have an own fragrance. We have I love this. We're
yes.
crazy on details. We have an own magazine. We have small Swiss chocolates. Every
yes.
detail is thought through. We have a very clear design in every clinic. And you know, one of my favorite quotes is invest in memories. There seem to be a few key factors which matter, right? And I think this one is one. We are in this field of beauty, perfection, quality, and we have to live it. You know, we have to show it with every detail. I'm not sure if you know, I have a 2 Michelin star restaurant. Did you know that?
I did not.
It has 2 ideas behind that. One is employees, which we'll touch probably later on.
Yeah.
We invest a lot in employee branding. The second thing is, I was exactly the same opinion. It's about memories, creating these special moments for our patients. And I was searching for things, how to visually and emotionally transport our vision of what we're doing in our core business. And if you know these Michelin star restaurants, every single course is like a tiny piece of art. The kitchen looks like an operating theater, super clean. They work with these tweezers, and the entire evening, the entire dinner is an experience. And that's just another way to show what my vision is of a beauty clinic or whatever. You even can break it down to healthcare.
Yeah, details matter. Details matter. And that will go a long way to crafting the experience. So for your listeners, remember, you're selling an experience, not just a result. When you understand that, you'll have a leg up on everybody else who's just selling a result. When you walk in, my office has a specific scent that's piped through our HVAC system. And it's a memorable scent. And everyone talks about how good my office smells. And then that is something I want tangible. It's all those things add up. They don't really realize that we've taken that detail, but they just walk in and there's just a specific way it looks and smells and feels, and all that works towards creating this experience. And experiences are what are memorable.
Talon, do you measure patient satisfaction?
We do. We have, for me, what matters most is not a pat on the back. I get a lot of those, right? And so I'm thankful for the positive feedback. I really am, but I appreciate more the negative, because when you get to your stage or my stage, I'm so far removed from what's happening in that experience. I'm not seeing what's happening at the check-in desk. You have 140 employees. You don't know how the phone's being answered. And so I am acutely aware of my blind spots. I know I have them. I may not know what they are. So we do a lot of surveys at the end of the experience, for sure, to acquire some of those constructive criticisms and negative feedback. And then I just investigate. I don't take it personally. I go look, and it
absolutely
could be totally misconception, and it didn't happen like that. Or maybe, even better yet, maybe there's a problem I can solve and do it better. Because one more thing, and I tell my employees this all the time: the enemy, you've heard this saying, the enemy of future success is current success. And you think you've made it, and you think we're awesome, that is a dangerous place to be, and complacency is a dangerous spot.
Yeah, we do the same than Disney World does. It's called the Net Promoter Score. So every time a patient leaves our clinic, he gets a message, WhatsApp, and we ask them, how likely would you recommend our clinic or the doctor to a friend or a family member from 1 to 10? And there's science behind it. So if they choose or pick 9 or 10, they are promoter. If they choose 7 or 8, they're already passives, and everything below that is already negative. And you get a score every month, and that's great help. So that's what we do. And if the scores are going down, we then start investigating. Of course, we do the same. We take critics very serious, and we closely work with that. But beyond that, we do this Net Promoter Score.
That is very smart. So all of you business owners that are expanding, I noticed when I was providing the service, obviously I can control myself and how I'm presenting, and the reputation building early on. Building a reputation is very difficult. Losing it is very easy.
Yeah.
And so when I was in total control of building that reputation, I had a degree of comfort because it was just me speaking to patients. But now, like you've got 140 employees. I've got a bunch of providers that are now providing services, and I've got a little less control of how things are being said and how things are being rolled out. So it's a very good idea to have some objective measures like that, just to make sure that we're staying on brand, that we're still selling the same wonderful experience, because it's easy to get a little bit of mission drift or brand drift the more people you add on your boat. It looks starts looking a little less like the foundational kind of principles and standards that things were built on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can move in a more positive direction. But it is something for the leaders to be very acutely aware of. I call it your blind spots, or watch out for your shadows.
Talon, how do you choose employees? How you structure the recruiting process, interview, and let me know.
This is a good one. Here's the thing about employees, and I love podcasts because we could sit here and talk about it. I'm not, you just take it or leave it. This is just my personal take.
No, I love it.
And you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree, and your listeners don't have to agree. But I always, first of all, hire for values. So we know kind of what our cultures are. We know what our values are. So it's very important to hire for your values, because if you're hiring people with similar values, motivations are much, much easier because you're working towards the same set of goals. You have the same set of motivations. So that's the first principle as leaders, is make sure you understand your values clearly, and that way you hire to your values. But beyond that, I am a big fan, Felix, big fan of hiring for character traits and attributes, not for skill. And this is where people want to argue with me. But if you look at my employees, I can't think of a single one that came from the aesthetic space. I have a nurse injector who is a ER nurse, and I have a nurse practitioner who does all of our women's health and treatments like that, who is a labor and delivery nurse. And the reason why I love that is as my team travels with me and we do live demonstrations like you guys did in Miami, it's like a proud dad moment. I get a big smile on my face, and everybody wants to know, like, where did you find these people? They always say, where did you find them? And I get the biggest smile on my face, and I look at them and I say, I didn't find them. I made them.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And so if you hire for character traits and attributes that would serve that job well. So when you get your job description, like front office, you want someone who's outgoing, is pleasant and presentable, that's going to speak well. And then I can train all the rest.
Yes,
so hire
I
for
agree.
attributes, character traits, and then the skills you can train. And those people do so much better, in my experience, than someone who feels like they know it all because they've been in the space for 10 years. Sometimes that's a more difficult player. And again, tons of people can argue with me on that. But that's
I agree 100% with you. But another hard thing is, how do you retain good employees? How do you keep them motivated and retain them in your team?
So at the end of the day, a job is a way to make a paycheck. And if that is why people are showing up for work, they could do that anywhere. Rather, if they are on your boat with you, moving to the other shoreline or to the goal that's been defined by you as the leader, and they are participating in accomplishing a mission, there's something more to that than just showing up for a paycheck. Then it becomes like, oh, this is great. I'm working and helping Doc towards this mission. Oh, by the way, I get a paycheck to do that. And attrition's going to happen. It's going to happen, but it comes down to having a strong corporate culture, and then mission clarity. And then once you identify the people that share your values, that buy into your mission, retention is much easier if you have that construct. You're going to have people that jump on the boat and want to stay on the boat because they're helping you row to a mission. They're not just there to garnish a paycheck. The paycheck kind of becomes like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
You've got a structure where you just show up to get paid. They can do that anywhere.
I love this. There'll
always be a better paycheck. There always will be.
Always, yeah. Absolutely.
You have to give a fair wage, and you have to be competitive with your wage. But you can't necessarily outspend the next guy, and trying to keep someone there because of a paycheck and always give more is not great business sense. And it's at the end of the day, there's always going to be a bigger paycheck somewhere else. So it's not a great way to do it.
Would you mind sharing concrete advice, or what kind of concrete steps do you take to create this culture? Because that's a topic many people are struggling with, right?
Yeah, I think the first thing to understand about corporate culture, it's the intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
What is corporate culture? It's just that thing that is special, but you can't quite put your finger on it. When you step into my door, it's the smell, right? You don't realize we put a scent in the HVAC system. It's all these little touches and little intangibles is the corporate culture. And so when you're trying to build corporate culture as a leader, as a business owner, you have to understand there's two parts to that. It's the intentional things that you and I create, but it's also what you and I allow. And that is the missed part. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's say we're creating a culture around our values. Let's say one of our values is efficiency. I like to be on time. So I'm going to drive a culture of efficiency.
Yeah.
If I allow my employees to show up 5 minutes late, do I really value efficiency? And what does that tell the team when I say I value efficiency, but I allow you to show up late?
Yeah.
So remember, as a leader, when you're designing your culture, you're designing around values. So name them: efficiency, empowerment, excellence. Those are our three. Those are the things that I hang my hat on: is excellence, efficiency, and empowering my employees and my patients. And when you come to my place, I promise you, you will feel all three of those things. So it's not about just, so name it so you can work towards it, those values, and that will create a culture of excellence. Just like your Michelin star restaurant, I'm sure you guys value excellence, and you're creating a culture of excellence, right? And so you name your values, you start shaping your culture, but understand, friends, understand clearly that culture is just as much about what you allow as it is what you kind of deploy, what you create. And that's the sneaky one that'll get you. If you say you value efficiency, but you're always running late, it'll hurt you.
Perfect. I always say, or if you would ask me, what is a good leader? I try to compare it with a good father. A good father can be very generous and caring and protecting, but a good father is also very clear on certain things. And that's how I do it. And I agree on that very, very much. And especially if you grow bigger, like I don't know, if it's like over 100 people, you're not the leader of everyone anymore. So you need a good leadership structure, and you have to have clear rules. You know, if you start allowing meetings here and there, or allowing coming late, you will mess up. The bigger you get, the clearer you have to be on what you're not allowed.
Have clarity and communication.
Yeah.
Clarity and communication are so huge as you start to scale and grow.
How do you handle communication? That's a tough one, because the bigger you get, the more complex it is. And how do you handle it? Do you have meetings? Do you have an app? Do you write emails?
I think when it comes to communication, the hierarchy is very important because I can communicate with my chief, who then takes care of all of the people that communicate to him and him and him. And then so within that, structured meetings are very important. So every month to have an all-staff meeting, every week to have an immediate departmental meeting. It's not the whole staff has to get together, but the aesthetics people get together and the injectors get together, so weekly we have departmental meetings, monthly we have all staff meetings. I meet with my executive team every week. So meetings are important, but and you could do a whole podcast on meetings. You don't want to meet just to meet. They have to have a purpose. You need to be making decisions. You need to be.
It's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Oh, I sometimes meet is like gosh, guys, we got to be very pointed with our meetings.
I need a purpose, agenda, and duration.
You have to. You have to. Otherwise, we're just wasting time. So hierarchy, and then in terms of communication, you need a vehicle. We use Teams, Microsoft Teams, and we have departments, and we have global. So I could get right now, and I can get on Teams, and I can just send my whole team communication from the top. So you need a structure, and you need a vehicle. And once you have those two things, you just start building it out.
Yeah, amazing. Perfect. So exactly how we do it. We just launched our internal employees app yesterday, and it's very, very much the same than Teams. Talon, how much do you invest in trainings to your people, and how do you do it yourself, or you send them to masterclasses somewhere else?
Yeah, great question. For me, I am never afraid to admit when I don't know something. So if my team comes to me and says, "Hey, doc, I want to learn this skill," if it's a skill that I don't possess, I love furthering their education. So my nurse injectors, I will tell you honestly, Felix, I have no pride about it. That team can just out inject me any day of the week. Any day. I mean, the last time I did an inject was 4 years ago. And if anyone ever wanted me to do lips, I would say you need to go see Nurse Beth. So it really depends on what skill we're trying to acquire or what technique we're trying to acquire. Of course, we have a lot of in-house training to further strengthen that culture, and kind of if we onboard a new front office person, there's a ton of in-house training. But when it comes to technical training, my team really just comes to me with opportunities for all the time. You know, they're, "Hey doc, I really want to go learn this thread, or really want to go over here and learn how to do these lips from this person." We have a training budget kind of set aside for things like that. I've got a controller is her title. She really does some of the finances, some of the building, physical, making sure bills are paid type of stuff. She wants to go and do classes to do human resources training. I think that's great. Yeah, let's look what that looks like. So we assess the goal of the training. So she wants to go do HR. What is the goal of that, and how does it fit in our company? And if the goal seems reasonable and it's a good fit, something that benefits our company, if I could see, "Oh yeah, I'd love that. We need that," we will pay for that.
Like we do it. It seems we have very, very much similarities, and can't wait to meet you in person one day. Pretty sure there's in regards of values, by the way, we have a spirit book, and it's a book every single new employee gets handed over on the first day with our values, with our benefits and our trainings and everything. So it's cool. Yeah, it's very much the same. Cool. Talon, let's come to the topic devices. A question quite often has been asked in Miami: when should I buy devices? How can I make devices profitable? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, this one is fun to unpack. Here's the thing. If you're talking specific, it depends who your crowd is, first of all. Depends who your crowd is. As a global principle, one thing that you should always understand, and I'm talking to you right now, listeners, you guys that are tuned in, never, ever, ever buy a device to make money. Don't buy a device because these salesmen that come in their fancy suits, everyone should make money, right? I'm going to make $1 million with this device, and the device ends up being a piece of crap. So don't buy a device to make money. I hate when I see that, because the money always sounds amazing and it never turns out that way, and Felix will tell you that. Always buy a device to meet a need. So identify your need first. For example, if you're a nurse injector, you need to be able to treat 3 things. And if you're not treating all 3 of these things, you're under-treating your patients, or you're inappropriately treating your patients. You need to be able to, and so when we talk about rejuvenation, we need to be able to correct sun-damaged skin, or skin that's been damaged by the elements. We need to be able to correct volume loss or descent, and we need to be able to correct skin laxity. If I can't correct all 3 of these, I'm either under-treating my patients or inappropriately treating my patients, and that's how we have people walking around overfilled. So when you think about this first step, like, I think I need a device, when and what should I get? Understand first, don't buy a device to make money, buy a device to meet a need.
Yep.
Once you identify that need, then rather than being a used car salesman and pushing this treatment and pushing this device, you're simply a professional, a practitioner that has a solution for your patient's needs. Hey, I've got skin laxity. I've got a great solution for you. It's this InMode device. Or, hey, man, I've lost all my volume. I've got a solution for you. It's this Voluma over here, or this Sculptra, fill in the blank. So make sure you're meeting needs, not just trying to make money, and you'll be organically much more successful if you frame it that way. So if you're a nurse injector out there, if you're an esthetician out there, make sure you understand your need clearly. Maybe you're an esthetician that has some chemical peels, you've got dermaplanes, hydrofacials, but you don't have anything for sun-damaged skin. Well, your need would be an IPL or something for correction. Now go find that. Once you implement that, yes, it'll cost money, and yes, they're expensive, but when you're organically meeting needs rather than just trying to push a product, it will be successful, I promise, if you set it up that way.
Cool, amazing. Talon, have you detected any new technologies or changes, developments in our industry?
I think right now, the holy grail that everyone is trying to achieve from a medical device company is skin tightening. Everyone wants a minimally invasive or a non-invasive way to tighten skin. So a lot of people are trying to get away from big cuts and surgeries and downtime.
Yeah.
And so I'd call it an emerging market, but it's really not emerging. I mean, it's front and center. It's huge. And so the skin tightening market is huge. And there is all kinds of iterations of that. So we've got radiofrequency microneedling. We've got radiofrequency, we've got ultrasound, we've got all kinds of different ways to tighten skin. But at the end of the day, it's all based on one principle, and that is using energy to create heat. Heat creates skin contraction. And so there's a lot in that space. If you're not well educated in that space, get educated, because it is becoming increasingly more popular, especially in the space in the United States. So make sure you're very familiar with energy-based devices that create heat. That heat creates skin contraction, and do your research. And there's a lot of excellent products on the market that are minimally to non-invasive to help your patients with skin laxity.
Is InMode or Morpheus one of your favorite devicies?
I don't know what I'm allowed to say
about everything. We are
podcast,
free.
Yeah,
it's a super trend here, to be honest. It's super
yes.
Sought after.
For the record, I am heavily biased. I speak for the company, so that needs to be clear. I would never want anyone to feel like I'm pulling the wool over their eyes. So yes, I speak for the company, but the reason why I speak for the company is because I believe in it. I have 6 Morpheuses, and we use them all the time.
Cool.
And it really does work well.
Cool. What about competition? That's a big fear for many nurses, and they ask me on should I discount, which I don't agree at all, but I want to hear your opinion.
Oh, I love it already. I love it. Okay. Competition. Here's what I would encourage you if you're listening, guys. Don't focus on your competition. Focus on your clients. Please don't focus on your competition. Now, you don't want to be naive. You need to know the market. You need to know the competitors in the market. I know everyone in my market, but I'm not worried about them. In fact, I try to conduct myself with a more collegial attitude. There's too much divisiveness in this space, and it's not needed. There's enough work for everyone.
Yeah.
We don't need to chop each other off at the knees. Rather, in my town, what I try my best to never focus on my competition and never fall in that easy trap of talking negatively about a competitor. I try to set up a structure where we focus on our clients, not our competition. So if you're worried about your competition, I would say stop. Know them, understand what they're doing, don't be naive, but don't worry about them. Focus on your clients first, let that be your priority. The rest will sort out in the wash. And then don't take the easy bait to talk negatively about the person across the street. It's a poor look. If you don't have anything nice to say, what'd your mom tell you? Just don't say anything at all, right? I'm not saying you got to talk somebody up. Just keep your mouth shut. And I promise you those principles will carry you a long way.
Yep.
That's the first thing. Okay. So don't focus on your competition, focus on your clients. When you think about creating competitive advantage, so now I'm in this new space, I'm a nurse injector, I just opened my location, I know my competition, I'm trying not to worry about them, but I've got bills to pay and I'm worried about them. Right? It's easier said than done. There's two ways, if you're taking notes, friends, write these down. There's 2 ways to create competitive advantage. The first way is a cost advantage. Sounds like Felix agrees with me. I would say, please don't compete on cost. So a cost advantage may be a short-term spark, but there's long-term implication.
Spiral down, yeah.
Because what you have just done subconsciously in the mind of your consumer is you have told your consumer you're actually cheaper than what you really present yourself to be. And that's not a good look. So think, Felix, you'll tell all your people this. Think of any high-end brand that you spend your extra money on, Gucci or fill in the blank. I like bourbon.
That's
so I like
exactly
drinking
what that's it.
cigars, whatever, right? When was the last time that you saw Gucci have a 30% site-wide sale?
They either burn their bags before selling it on discount. They burn it end of season. And it's so funny. I have a slide in my presentation with all these luxury brands telling exactly this thing. And that's, by the way, Talon, why these details matter. That's why it's called the behavior economics or something like this. People buy on emotion. People, if your spot looks high end, they're not starting to debate about prices. That's what we literally discovered. Our first clinic would say average, and we had these discussions all the time. Since we have this new clear interior design, this room fragrance, everything we were talking about previously, since that, we don't have any discussions about prices anymore.
Yep.
Alongside many other reasons, by the way, yeah.
Yes. So your first way to create a competitive advantage is a cost advantage. Both Felix and I are aligned. Don't do that. Don't compete on price. And another discussion that we can unpack later on is, when do you discount? I always talk about value adding rather than discounting. Absolutely. So as a first knee-jerk, make sure to create that sense of urgency or to create that call to action with your clients. You always want to do a value add, not discount.
Absolutely.
And we could show you how to do that. But there is a time and a place to discount. And I have three very clear-cut criteria on when we do that. So cost advantage is one way to create competitive advantage. The second way is a differentiation advantage. And that's where I want your audience to live. Well, what is a differentiation advantage? Well, how do you do that? Well, there's two ways to differentiate yourself. Number one, it's with a product or a unique service. Yep. So let's say you go back to that Morpheus. If you buy a Morpheus, yes, there may be quite a few in your market, but compared to how many injectors or skincare clinics there are on the market, there's not that much. So I was talking to a plastic surgeon in Orlando at an InMode meeting who was frustrated because he had 137 plastic surgeons in his immediate area. And he didn't want to buy one of these devices because he was all competing for the same patients. So I asked him, I said, how many of these devices are in your local market? And he didn't know, and we looked it up, and there were 7. So yes, he would be the 8th, but it's way easier to compete with 7 practices than it is 137 practices, and that's how you can instantly be differentiated on a unique product. And so one thing I want to, do you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%, yeah.
A differentiation advantage is how you should create a competitive advantage. So think about a product or a service, and then it all comes out, because Felix, we were talking about the luxury brands, and I love this discussion. And so one other homework assignment besides those books that I was giving you is this notion of a value proposition. Write it down, circle it. Value proposition. What is your value proposition? What do you bring to the market that is of value? And you set up your reputation around that. So our value proposition, and I should probably get this trademarked because I'm spreading it all over the country as I speak and travel, but it's excellent care, exceptional results. Excellent care, exceptional results. It's tagged everywhere in my office, on my t-shirts. Excellent care, exceptional results. Excellent care, exceptional results. That's our value proposition. That's what I bring to you as a consumer. And then here's the crazy thing, friends, and Felix will tell you this. When you understand clearly your value proposition, and when you roll it out, you start building a reputation. So guess what I'm known for is the level of service we provide and the results we provide. Excellent care, exceptional results. And now we can command price premiums, and that's how it works, friends.
Oh, I love it. I could talk for hours with you. It's just passion. Very cool. Talon, my last question before we want to know, where can people meet you? But what do you think will the aesthetic industry look like in 30 or 50 years? What will be different from today? Just, it's guessing or speculating, but yeah.
That's a great question. I think we will continue so here's what's, to answer that, I would also say, think about 30 years ago, right? We didn't have this thing.
Yeah.
Think about what phone calls looked like 30 years ago, and look where we're at now. So I really think the future of the aesthetic space will be centered around technology, and as increasingly rapidly changing as technology is, I think we're going to march down a path to where everything becomes increasingly more minimally invasive or non-invasive, And the results are going to continue to get better and better and better and require less and less and less downtime, require less and less and less actual surgery. So 30 years from now, maybe I don't even have a job as a surgeon.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time period with all the AI, and that could be a podcast its own, discussing how AI will influence our industry. Talon, where can we meet you?
Yeah, my travel schedule is crazy. So if you're in the U.S. and you're looking, just if you find us on our social media, oftentimes we're posting where I'm speaking. I usually do about 15 to 16 of big events per year. So that's 4 per quarter. These events, we roll out medical technology. I'm the keynote speaker, so I speak all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Sunday is a business day, no medical technology. It is purely how to create success and, more importantly, how to sustain it over time. So it's creating success and sustaining success is Sunday. And that's the lecture actually your audience heard and reported back to you as that lecture. So just find us on social media, and we're all over. I know coming up, I've got Newport Beach, I've got Atlantic City, Atlanta, Georgia, and I've got Chicago all coming up. And then I would love next time you're in the U.S., we got to meet up.
I will.
I
promise. We put all the information in the caption, also the books you recommend and everything, so people can check on that. And I can promise you, the next time I'm in the U.S., I will pre-inform you early enough, and I'm looking forward to really meet you in person.
Yeah, thank you for the hospitality.